9 strikes of a rust-eaten bell pierce the pre-dawn darkness, each note flattened by centuries of ash and industrial decay. Steam boils from the processing yards as night condensers purge their mechanical lungs, and 847,000 numbered backs bend as one toward painted muster lines. The air tastes of iron and disinfectant. Across the valley, exhaust stacks breathe a low hymn of waste heat. The Imperium's penal worlds are factories that convert disobedience into materiel. Human bodies processed into strategic resources with industrial efficiency. The scale operates beyond human comprehension. 50,000 designated penal worlds scatter across the galaxy's breadth, collectively processing 400 billion condemned at any given moment. That number is not an error. That number is policy. The Administratum's penal classification cogitators assign destinations based on resource requirements rather than crime severity, heretics bound for promethium refineries, tax evaders allocated to agri-processing facilities, political dissidents shipped to munitions foundries, where their intimate knowledge of rebellion proves strategically valuable. Each prisoner wears a segmented torque at the skull's base, machine soldered and answerable to subharmonic codes. The frequency tags bear tiny catechismic script: track, warn, pain, silence. When a collar blinks amber, movement ceases, white permits designated spokesman to speak, red means the machine listens. Compliance becomes litany as much as law. The muster itself measures productivity. Cogitator masts rake the ranks with green light, comparing counts to ledger expectations, flagging absences for recovery or accounting adjustment. Confession booths line the yard perimeter like mechanized shrines. Each contains pick recorder, vox pickup, incense cone, and ration chit slot. The booth processes sin and productivity simultaneously. Forgive me, for I fell short by 0.3 tons. The priest records contrition, the overseer logs penalty, the munitorum tabulates variance against tithe statements. Grace enters ledgers as meal schedule adjustment. Behind the booths, another conversion line operates under vents hot with disinfectant. Here, administrative losses undergo rendering. The phrase conceals meaning and intent. Broken bodies become starch, gelatin, machine oil. A tech adept sanctifies the vats with 3 sensor strokes and muttered purity rites. Offcuts feed kennel servitors that clear tunnels of human debris. Even ash receives cataloguing, bagging, shipment for soil reclamation on worlds still pretending growth. On Mordax, waste equals heresy, because abundance makes mercy thinkable. Convict supervisor. Caney emerges from the processing crowd, his 7-year survival exceptional among populations where 41% die within 12 months. His collar bears additional authorization codes, Theta 9 frequencies responding to specific tonal sequences broadcast during emergency protocols. Most convicts assume the 9 bell strike signal shift changes, unaware the pattern serves multiple administrative functions depending on frequency modulation and broadcast duration. Muster releases by sections. Lines flow toward conveyors, lifts, shafts. The 9 bell strokes parcel bodies into zones mapping onto power structures. Late arrival finds collars suddenly heavy and worlds very small. Overseers wrapped in storm cloaks against perpetual condensate drizzle watch from gantries with stun canes and data slates. Numbers perform the speaking, tonnage targets in one column, punishment indices in the next, gaps where names might have appeared. Work gangs form as echoes fade, experienced convicts claiming newer arrivals for protection arrangements masquerading as mentorship programs. Information becomes currency, guard rotation schedules, quota adjustment warnings, intelligence regarding which overseers accept bribes versus those responding only to violence. Survival depends on understanding unwritten rules governing daily existence within officially sanctioned brutality. The industrial complex hums with purposeful activity. Promethium refineries belch toxic exhaust while ore processing facilities grind through megatons extracted from planetary cores. Manufacturing plants produce lasgun power cells and guard uniforms, production lines staffed by workers whose crimes transformed into productive capacity through careful punishment doctrine application. Before work lines deploy, data slates flicker as orbital transmissions arrive. The night's calculations filter through administrative channels, quotas ratcheting upward by 4, 7, 12% across complexes sharing neither geology nor crime profiles. No reasons append to directives. Overseers initial targets while collars chirp acknowledgement in machine language. Somewhere above, someone rebalanced ledgers. Below, bodies pay the difference. The bell's 9 notes wait to sound again, their deeper purpose remaining unspoken, while overnight quota increases demand explanation that will never come. The quotas, climbing through Mordax's data streams, carry signatures of a machinery 10 millennia in construction. Those overnight increases, transmitted without explanation or appeal, represent the terminal output of bureaucratic apparatus that transforms judicial process into resource allocation protocol. What the condemned experience as arbitrary cruelty reflects systematic logic operating at scales beyond individual comprehension, the Imperium's vast engine for converting disobedience into strategic materiel. This machinery took shape during the Great Crusade's expansion, when labor shortages threatened compliance schedules as worlds burned faster than populations could rebuild. Expeditionary fleets required munitions, provisions, construction materials at rates exceeding voluntary production capacity. The solution emerged through pragmatic necessity. Criminal populations provided expendable workforce while satisfying moral requirements for punishment. Early penal battalions cleared minefields and constructed fortifications, their deaths serving dual functions of atonement and tactical utility. The language was functional, not yet sanctified: transport, task, attrition, replace. The age of apostasy transformed expedient policy into sacred doctrine. Goga van Dyer's reign institutionalized suffering as spiritual currency, encoding punishment theology into imperial law through the decree passive. Theological justification provided moral framework for systematic exploitation, rebranding brutality as redemptive mercy. Synod minister homilies named labor as penitence and equated obedience with absolution. When Van Dyer fell, his penal apparatus survived because it had become economically indispensable. The catechisms lingered where they proved useful: litanies before shift changes, incense at sentencing ceremonies, seals of purity on transport doors. Current administratum codification operates through interlocking mechanisms designed for maximum throughput efficiency. The conviction pipeline begins at planetary level, where Arbeitscourts process cases according to standardized sentencing matrices. Judges receive monthly directives specifying conviction quotas by crime category, adjusting penalties to match labor demand projections. A tax evader might receive penal servitude during ore extraction seasons, but face execution during agricultural surplus periods. Justice becomes inventory management disguised as moral authority. Departamento Munitorum assessments overlay military requirements onto judicial outcomes. Regional commanders submit labor requests through official channels: 10,000 bodies for fortification construction, 50,000 for munitions production. The Munitorum cross-references demand against conviction schedules, issuing guidance to Arbeits magistrates regarding sentence severity and frequency. When a crusade surges or hive war enters grinding phase, materials deficit forecasts spike across multiple sectors. Penal transmissions follow within standard processing cycles. Penal classification. Cogitators represent the system's mechanical heart, ancient machines analyzing crime data and resource requirements to generate optimal allocation matrices. They do not weigh guilt, they match deficits. A heretic's theological knowledge routes them toward ecclesiarchy facilities where doctrinal familiarity proves useful for identifying additional heretics. Political dissidents receive assignment to high-casualty operations where organizational skills serve production quotas before inevitable elimination. The cogitators encode institutional priorities where strategic resource production takes precedence over punishment severity. Within this framework, redemption dockets emerged as administrative innovation, providing psychological incentive for compliance while serving governors as accounting instruments. These parchments promise eventual sentence completion and citizenship restoration, but function primarily as sophisticated deception mechanisms. Each docket represents tithe credit. Bodies committed to imperial service offset taxation requirements through human resource contribution calculations. Legal language promises freedom after sentence completion, but administrative reality ensures most convicts die before eligibility through lost documentation, reclassification procedures, additional charges filed during incarceration. Governors utilize redemption dockets for tithe manipulation, trading human resources for reduced material obligations. A world contributing 1 million convicts might receive 30% reduction in mineral extraction requirements. The exchange rate favors those possessing large criminal populations or flexible legal interpretation regarding crime definitions. The promise motivates behavior while the system ensures promises remain unfulfilled. Sealed within emergency protocols lies Authority Code Protocol Purge 7, filed under containment procedures requiring tri-seal authorization from Commissariat Representative Arbahis Magistrate and Facility Magos Logis. The document remains heavily redacted even for authorized personnel. Trigger language cites combination thresholds, insurrection risk indices, communications loss, throughput variance above tolerance levels. Fragmentary evidence suggests the protocol enables mass casualty events disguised as administrative accidents while maintaining plausible deniability. The line between emergency and routine blurs in classified margins. This machinery transforms citizens into consumable resources through institutional logic, prioritizing efficiency over humanity. Our scope remains deliberately constrained, one world, one processing cycle, because systems reveal themselves in single breaths. The overnight quota increases streaming to Mordax represent algorithmic adjustments, balancing supply against galactic demand. Citizens become criminals through legal process, criminals become convicts through judicial sentence, convicts become resources through administrative classification. The transformation completes when breathing stops and rendering begins, but the questions multiply. Do redemption dockets represent genuine mercy or administrative deception, and under what conditions does Protocol Purge 7 authorize the unthinkable to become routine? The same algorithmic logic that elevated Mordax's quotas overnight now manifests in physical form. 3 transport vessels descend through the world's perpetual overcast, their black hulls scarred by void transit and inscribed with purity seals already stained by atmospheric toxins. These torpedo-shaped carriers disgorge their human cargo twice weekly, 12,000 condemned souls stumbling down ribbed ramps into processing yards where disinfectant sprayers hiss and the 9-bell sequence echoes from mounted speakers. The transition from bureaucratic abstraction to industrial reality begins immediately upon atmospheric entry. Mechanicus servitors conduct intake with surgical precision that borders on sacred ritual. Augmetic limbs probe flesh for contraband, while scanning devices catalog biometric data into vast cogitator banks. Medical grading assigns each arrival to productivity categories based on physical capacity, previous skills, estimated lifespan under operational stress. Servo claws lift chins while Auspex wands trace rib cages, counting breaths and tasting blood with sanctified needles. A cogitator slate prints glyph strings for each prisoner: pulmonary capacity, bone density, prior fractures, infectious load, compliance probability assessed through pupil dilation and reflex testing. The servitors operate without speech or acknowledgement of humanity, their organic components replaced by whirring mechanisms and faces frozen in expressions of vacant compliance. Brass chits clatter down processing chutes into open palms, each stamped with zone letters and shift numerals dividing days into 16-hour segments. A former scribe receives notation for precision work assignments. A gang enforcer earns classification for heavy labor details. The elderly and infirm receive processing codes indicating immediate rendering potential, their bodies worth more as raw materials than productive units. Explosive collar installation completes the transformation from person to inventory item. Mechanical fingers fit each device with surgical precision, calibrating to individual neck dimensions while installing frequency receptors responding to specific tonal sequences. The collars bear catechismic script in microscopic detail, prayers for the Emperor's mercy intertwined with technical specifications for detonation protocols. Flesh fuses with metal through sacred oils and chemical bonding agents. Collar activation produces a soft chime, indicating successful integration into facility monitoring systems. Even before processing completes, survival economy emerges among desperate newcomers seeking any advantage within institutional constraints. A woman with hive mid-level accent trades a brass wedding band for berth assignment closer to heat pipes. A boy with ministry diction sells information about weak floor grates for extra ration chits and protection promises he will not receive. Personal items convert into proximity. Proximity converts into warmth. Warmth converts into another day. The ledger recognizes neither jewelry nor mercy, but both purchase time within systems designed for maximum resource extraction. Convict supervisor. Caney emerges from processing crowds wearing jacket taken from dead overseer and repaired until repairs outweigh original cloth. 7 years have scoured him to durable components, eyes that count accurately, hands that do not shake, voice capable of meeting voxcasters without rising pitch. His collar glows steady amber and bears additional authorization, markings enabling communication with facility command structure. Caney manages newcomer integration because he understands how to make bodies useful without breaking them too quickly, and because the institution has learned to rent his authority for maintaining order among populations exceeding direct oversight capacity. The collar frequency system operates through sophisticated signal processing monitoring individual compliance while enabling mass control during crisis situations. Standard frequencies carry routine instructions regarding work assignments, meal schedules, movement permissions. Theta 9 authorization codes respond to specific tonal sequences broadcast during emergency protocols, enabling designated supervisors to maintain order when regular command structure fails. A scuffle at inoculation stations provides demonstration. An overseer lifts horn to lips and releases 3-tone chord vibrating through bone and cartilage. Every collar within 20 meters freezes on amber compliance lock. Caney touches his own talk and murmurs essential wisdom. Learn the tones or die by them. Processing statistics reveal institutional priorities with bureaucratic clarity. Mordax records 41% mortality within first year under heading Industrial Complications. The phrase encompasses crush injuries, solvent lung damage, circulatory failure during extended shift cycles, misadventure with machinery. It does not record despair because that remains unbillable. Body carts wait in shadows with straps already uncoiled, rolling every evening at last light to collect administrative losses for rendering into useful materials. Work gang assignment follows algorithmic logic, balancing labor requirements against mortality projections. The penal classification cogitator processes inputs and generates destination strings: refinery, tunnel excavation, rendering facility, habitat salvage, munitions packing. A handful receive parchment stamped redemption docket in violet wax, looking at script as if viewing windows to impossible futures. Caney relieves nearest recipient of his document, folding it carefully into boot leather. Do not trade that now. It buys nothing today and attracts predators before sleep cycle. Lines form and move as gates open onto refinery complexes glowing with promethium fires. Processed convicts march toward assignments in columns organized by productivity classification, their movement following painted routes leading to different industrial facilities scattered across Mordax's scarred landscape. Manufacturing plants produce military equipment under quotas transmitted from orbital command stations, while ore processing facilities grind through megatons of extracted planetary resources. Caney walks beside departing columns, voice carrying lessons earned through institutional survival. The unwritten rules determining life and death remain unspoken during official processing, but emerge through whispered instruction in transport corridors: never be first in line, never be last, trade only once per cycle, watch the bell patterns for frequency variations, quotas bend numbers into impossible shapes, and numbers break human bodies eventually. Understanding guard corruption patterns, recognizing quota manipulation opportunities, identifying alliance possibilities among fellow convicts. These skills separate survivors from casualties in systems consuming human resources with maximum efficiency. The survival codes governing daily existence within compounds operate beyond official documentation, transmitted through experience and blood payment. How the work quota system actually functions, and inevitably fails, awaits explanation as new bodies flow into Mordax's industrial machinery, their fates determined by unwritten laws etched in ferrocrete, rust, and the accumulated wisdom of those who learn to read institutional violence as survival manual. The unwritten rules Caney whispers in transport corridors transform into mathematical certainties within Mordax's promethium refining complex. The columns break toward refinery gates at measured pace, their movement guided by painted lines that channel human resources toward extraction points with industrial precision. Heat blooms from promethium stacks in greasy waves carrying the smell of solvent and scorched metal, while overhead, pipework knots into cathedral arches, sweating condensate that falls as slow rain, slicking ferrocrete and flesh alike. A brass placard beside the muster arch displays the day's demand in block-etched numerals. 2.7 tons refined ore per convict per 16-hour shift. Below it, a smaller plate carries euphemism for failure, corrective measures authorized upon variance. The quota represents finely tuned calculation by mechanicus logis adepts, balancing raw material input against expected human capacity while factoring mortality projections and equipment limitations. The number bends human endurance into impossible configurations designed to extract maximum productivity while maintaining plausible casualty statistics. Inside the refinery complex, spanning 17 square kilometers of scarred terrain, the logic becomes brutally simple. Pull, crack, refine, dispatch. Extraction gangs feed promethium-bearing shale from deep tunnels onto conveyors that chew rock into slurry. Retorts roar at temperatures that melt unprotected flesh in seconds, while fractionating columns climb toward exhaust systems that clean air just enough to prevent immediate asphyxiation. Every valve wheel turns on the same fulcrum, tonnage. The scale does not care who carried more or whose lungs bled into filtration masks. The shift system locks bodies into rhythm designed to erase individual memory and identity. 16 hours of labor in protective suits patched with salvaged materials, their movements monitored by cogitator arrays, tracking productivity against quotas. 4 hours of minimal rest in barracks heated just enough to prevent freezing, sleep interrupted by machinery, hum, and cries from the sick. Corpse starch consumption occurs during shift changes, grey protein blocks manufactured from administrative losses and flavored with industrial salt, providing calories sufficient for basic function while maintaining visible reminder of institutional authority over life and death. Mandatory confession follows consumption, each convict reciting productivity statistics to mechanicus recorders while servo skulls monitor for signs of rebellion or despair. The ritual serves psychological conditioning rather than spiritual absolution, designed to internalize status as condemned resources. Missing quota by 10% triggers ration reduction, 20% brings public flogging with electro-whips, 30% means collar adjustment to pain frequency. Persistent failure results in administrative processing through rendering facilities. Within this grinding framework, work families emerge as survival mechanisms that share quotas and provide mutual protection against systematic brutality. These informal groups, typically 5 to 10 convicts, pool meager resources, share information, and critically balance each other's quotas when injury or exhaustion threatens individual completion. The arrangements operate through unspoken agreements enforced by necessity rather than affection. Trust develops through mutual recognition that survival depends on collective productivity exceeding individual capability. Caney's work family numbers 6 after careful selection. A former hive welder who reads gauges like weather patterns, a midwife with surgeon's hands repurposed for splinting and stitching, a tunnel-born worker who knows all quality by touch, and newer arrivals still learning refinery's dangerous grammar. They rotate leadership on heavy carts, pool ration chits to stabilize the weakest, and agree beforehand whose name will be offered when overseers demand culprits to match ledger discrepancies. The economic logic underlying these operations reveals itself through hidden subsidies buried in administratum calculations. Penal labor produces 31% of segmentum-grade strategic materials at 6% of standard labor costs. The efficiency calculation includes facility maintenance, guard salaries, equipment replacement, but excludes human resource costs because convict lives carry no accounting value beyond productivity potential. Free labor enables competitive pricing for Imperial Guard equipment, Navy fuel supplies, and mechanicus manufacturing inputs that makes conventional labor economically impossible. This economic dependence creates the system's first institutional contradiction. Efficiency requires keeping convicts alive long enough to train replacements and pass tactical knowledge of dangerous machinery, but punishment doctrine demands visible suffering to maintain deterrent effects and theological justification. Overseers walk careful lines between productivity maximization and punishment demonstration. Too much mercy enables rebellion, too much brutality kills experienced workers faster than training can replace them. The balance shifts with quota pressures and political oversight, creating unpredictable mortality spikes that disrupt production schedules. The contradiction manifests in daily operations where guards simultaneously protect valuable workers while demonstrating institutional authority through systematic cruelty. A convict achieving quota consistently receives medical attention for injuries that might reduce productivity, but faces public punishment for minor infractions to maintain discipline among observers. The system requires bodies strong enough to work and spirits broken enough to comply, achievable only through careful calibration of hope and despair. Caney calibrates his people to machinery's appetite with 7 years of brutal education. He positions the welder on gauge duty to catch pressure spikes before pipework failure. He anchors strongest workers on pull teams where shoulder and hip drive carts along railbeds furred with rust. He places the midwife at washdown stations with stolen antiseptic vials rationed into precious drops. He teaches newcomers to count their own steps and stop watching clocks because time measurement becomes part of punishment psychology. By mid-cycle, the pull team strikes something different in tunnel section Gamma 7. Slates twitch as slurry darkens and runs heavy, gauges jumping 2 lines before settling into new, loud equilibrium. The geological vein turns rich with high-grade promethium ore banded with catalytic materials that crack clean and process efficiently. 3 shifts of careful extraction produce tonnage exceeding combined quotas by 40%, numbers triggering cogitator alerts and administrative review. Chits begin stacking in Caney's hand at pace that would make pious men smile and careful men curse. The mathematics become dangerous. If flow holds, the gang clears quota with hours to spare, potentially filling another unit's deficit. But exceptional productivity reads as theft to overseers under suspicion, as hoarding to rival gangs, as opportunity to clerks who convert surplus into private leverage. It also invites recalculation from cogitators governing quotas, folding new capacity into new demands rather than providing relief. Visibility becomes currency, and currency proves lethal in systems designed for individual desperation. A yellow pennant snaps from gantries, signaling inspection and potential reassignment. Rival foremen take long breaths like predators scenting opportunity. Data servitors record output while Overseer Vex arrives with data slate and questions regarding productivity variance. His storm cloak drips condensate while servo skulls record responses for later analysis. The rich vein glows in tunnel darkness like promise and trap combined. Exceptional performance requires explanation, new techniques, hidden resources, collaborative arrangements. Each answer carries implications for punishment or reward, but both outcomes threaten work-family stability through separation or investigation. Recognition might bring privileges that divide members through differential treatment, while suspicion could reveal survival arrangements violating regulations. Caney watches administrative attention focus on success that suggests systematic organization among populations designed for desperate isolation. The refinery's arithmetic never stops calculating, only asks different questions and punishes different answers. Why exceptional productivity sometimes proves more dangerous than failure becomes clear, as numbers that should represent salvation transform into evidence of capacity for resistance beyond acceptable parameters. What corrective measures await those falling behind quotas pales beside consequences facing those whose achievement implies coordination, threatening institutional control over human resources scheduled for systematic consumption. The yellow pennant snapping above Gamma 7 activates Mordax's discipline grid, systematic apparatus maintaining order among millions of desperate condemned through carefully calibrated punishment hierarchies and surveillance networks. Overseer Vex's arrival with data slate and servo skull escort represents institutional response to productivity variance, treating exceptional performance as potential threat requiring investigation. The machinery that converts disobedience into materiel operates through control mechanisms as precise as the refinery's extraction protocols. The discipline grid operates through 4 ascending punishment tiers, each calculated to maintain productivity while demonstrating imperial authority. Reduction halves, rations for minor infractions, late arrival at muster, insufficient enthusiasm during mandatory prayers, tool misplacement. The punishment creates visible reminder of institutional control over survival while maintaining working capacity. Convicts receiving reduction develop hollow cheeks and trembling hands, becoming object lessons for compliance without losing ability to meet quotas. Isolation confines serious offenders to sensory deprivation cells measuring 2 meters square, with no light, sound, or human contact for periods ranging from 3 days to 3 weeks. The punishment breaks psychological resistance through calculated exposure to madness, returning subjects docile and hypervigilant regarding rule violations. Survivors emerge with 1,000-meter stares and compulsive behaviors, their minds reorganized around institutional priorities. Many develop permanent speech impediments, from screaming into soundproof walls until vocal cords hemorrhage. Correction provides public demonstration through electro-whip flogging administered during shift changes when maximum audiences witness consequences of disobedience. Servo skulls project deficit percentages overhead while overseers track audience attention on data slates. Averted eyes add lashes. The scarification patterns indicate crime categories. Theft earns parallel lines. Sabotage receives diagonal slashes. Sedition creates crosshatch marks that never fully heal. The markings enable instant identification while serving as permanent reminder that flesh belongs to the throne. Elimination represents summary execution for capital offences including escape attempts, assault on overseers, or persistent quota failure. Collars detonate with remote activation, bodies processed through rendering facilities within standard disposal timeframes. Death becomes administrative procedure rather than punishment, removing defective units from productive population with mechanical efficiency. The process occurs where it will be seen by proper number of witnesses at times that will not delay throughput. Informant networks provide the discipline grid's sensory apparatus. Statistical analysis indicates 1 convict in 7 reports on fellows in exchange for survival privileges, additional rations, medical attention, protection from rival gangs. The recruitment exploits desperation while offering minimal advantages to individuals facing systematic brutality. Many informants genuinely believe their cooperation prevents larger rebellions that would trigger mass culls, viewing collaboration as protective action rather than betrayal. They report planned slowdowns to prevent correction punishments, identify weapons caches to avoid elimination sweeps, monitor seditious conversations to forestall isolation sentences. The system transforms survival instinct into surveillance mechanism while providing ethical justification for collaboration. Commissar Vex embodies political oversight, ensuring proper, redemptive, suffering quotas meet doctrinal requirements. His authority spans multiple facility departments, empowered to investigate productivity variance, ideological compliance, punishment, effectiveness. The Stormcloak and Servo Skull escort signal commissariat authority, superseding local command when political considerations override operational efficiency. Vex measures facility performance against segmentum-wide standards for convict mortality, rebellion frequency, spiritual compliance indicators. The overseer's dilemma emerges through competing institutional demands requiring simultaneous productivity maximization and justice demonstration. Facility commanders must maintain output quotas while providing visible evidence of imperial punishment doctrine. Too much mercy enables rebellion and invites commissariat investigation. Too much brutality kills experienced workers and reduces strategic material production. The balance shifts with political oversight and resource demands, creating operational uncertainty affecting daily decision-making. The compromise is brutal arithmetic, punish on schedule, regardless of outcome, so success and failure both pay prices. Vex approaches Caney's work family with productivity variance reports and questions regarding exceptional output from Gamma 7 Tunnel. His interrogation seeks evidence of unauthorized organization, hidden resources, collaborative arrangements, violating regulations designed to maintain individual desperation. The Servo Skull records biometric data during responses, analyzing stress indicators for deception patterns. Success requires explanation, and explanation reveals survival mechanisms threatening institutional control. The investigation begins with separation protocols preventing coordination among subjects. Work family members receive individual questioning while data servitors analyze responses for consistency patterns. Information flows through established channels as fellow convicts calculate personal risk versus potential advantage through cooperation. The mathematical certainty governing informant networks suggests statistical probability that someone within observation range will report survival arrangements to gain favor with investigating authorities. Caney watches administrative machinery process his work. Family's success as evidence requiring investigation. The discipline grid responds to achievement with same systematic brutality applied to failure, seeking proof of organization, challenging control mechanisms designed to prevent collective action. How investigations process success and failure with equal brutality becomes clear as numbers transform salvation into resistance requiring correction. What underground economies emerge within official punishment structures awaits exposure through procedures that convert survival into criminal evidence. The investigation machinery grinding through Caney's work family creates immediate ripples through Mordax's shadow economy, informal systems operating within official punishment structures where desperation transforms into tradable commodity. While Commissar Vex records biometric stress patterns and servo skulls catalogue responses for deception analysis, parallel negotiations unfold through whispered exchanges during confession queues and meaningful glances across processing yards. The discipline grid's pressure activates underground markets that determine survival through currencies invisible to administrative ledgers. Medical supplies represent premium currency within barter networks operating beyond official oversight. A woman with burn-scarred forearms trades stolen antiseptic vials for information about guard rotation schedules, each transaction calculated against survival probability. Bandages torn from rendering facility waste purchase protection from gang violence for measured intervals. Stimulant tablets diverted from overseer supplies buy tool access, enabling quota completion when injury threatens productivity. The exchanges occur through careful ritual, items passed during mandatory formations, hidden beneath corpse starch ration blocks tucked into work gloves during shift changes. Discovery triggers correction punishment, but survival often requires accepting calculated risks. Information flows as secondary currency, priced according to immediacy and tactical value. Knowledge of quota adjustments before official announcement enables preparation time worth extra rations to desperate gangs. Intelligence regarding overseer corruption patterns sells for protection arrangements that might prevent elimination. Weakness assessments of rival work families purchase tactical advantages during resource disputes. The midwife in Caney's family leverages medical expertise for advance warning of inspection schedules, enabling concealment of survival arrangements before administrative review arrives with data slates and questions. Tool access rents by measured intervals, spanner, cutter, valve key, signed out against tally sticks maintained by trustees who add or subtract debt through administrative discretion. A working respirator filter purchases quota assistance when lung damage threatens individual productivity. Contraband, salt and render fat trade for sexual favors, warmth, silence regarding regulatory violations. The ledger devours shame because shame slows hands that must barter to survive another processing cycle. Trustees emerge as shadow aristocracy, managing internal logistics while wielding significant informal power within official structures. These long-term survivors, typically serving 8 to 15 years, maintain facility operations through intimate knowledge of systems, personalities and survival mechanisms invisible to standard oversight. They wear cloth bands marked with cog-etched sigils, authority borrowed from overseers and repaid through information, order, maintenance, and careful management of pressure that might otherwise explode into rebellion requiring mass casualties. Trustee authority operates through delicate balance between convict loyalty and institutional service. They allocate work assignments based on survival probability calculations while reporting genuine security threats to overseers seeking advancement opportunities. They facilitate black market transactions that maintain population stability while preventing activities triggering administrative crackdowns that would disrupt established networks. Their survival depends on maintaining utility to both populations, while avoiding visibility that invites investigation into arrangements technically violating facility regulations. The underground economy functions not as resistance but as necessary pressure valve preventing total system collapse. Without informal resource redistribution, mortality rates would exceed replacement capacity, threatening strategic material production quotas transmitted from orbital command. Overseers tacitly encourage certain black market activities, medical supply sharing that reduces official healthcare costs, information networks identifying potential security threats, protection arrangements, maintaining order without requiring additional guard personnel. The system permits controlled violation of regulations while brutally suppressing activities challenging institutional authority. This selective tolerance operates through unwritten understanding between experienced overseers and established trustees. Small-scale medical trading receives unofficial sanction because it reduces facility expenses while maintaining productivity. Information networks earn protection when they identify genuine seditious organization before it metastasizes into rebellion. Protection arrangements continue until they challenge official hierarchy or enable resistance coordination. The boundary between permitted and prohibited remains deliberately unclear, enabling arbitrary enforcement when administrative needs require scapegoats or examples. Psychological adaptation enables survival through alternate moral frameworks developed to navigate institutional dehumanization. Convicts learn compartmentalization, separating actions required for survival from ethical systems that would condemn such behavior under normal circumstances. Betrayal becomes protective stewardship. Theft transforms into resource redistribution, serving collective survival. Violence emerges as communication method within populations where official channels lead only to punishment. The frameworks provide cognitive tools for maintaining sanity while engaging behaviors that would destroy identity under conventional moral systems. VEX's investigation threatens established equilibrium by focusing administrative attention on survival arrangements typically operating below official notice. The work family's exceptional productivity suggests organization violating regulations designed to maintain individual desperation and prevent collective action. Fellow convicts calculate personal risk versus potential advantage through cooperation with investigating authorities, while trustees evaluate whether protection of Caney's group serves institutional interests or threatens their own carefully cultivated positions. The mathematical certainty governing informant networks generates pressure requiring release through calculated sacrifice. Statistical analysis indicates investigation momentum will demand evidence of regulatory violation regardless of actual guilt or innocence. The machinery requires feeding. Caney recognizes protection of core family members requires offering alternative targets, satisfying administrative appetite for punishment while preserving essential survival relationships. The decision represents pragmatic calculation rather than moral choice within frameworks where loyalty operates through hierarchical obligation measured against survival probability. Behind barracks where condensate drips from overhead pipework, Caney approaches a trustee managing tool allocation and information flow between administrative levels. The negotiation occurs through established protocols, positioning, during confession queue, meaningful glances during muster formation, whispered exchange masked by machinery noise. He trades intelligence about planned work slow down among recent arrivals in Delta 9 sector, emphasizing scale and coordination that would satisfy VEX's requirement for evidence of seditious organization. The information proves accurate. Newer arrivals lacking established protection networks have organized desperate protest against quota increases, planning coordinated delays at valve stations and conveyor systems. Their theory suggests slowdown might force cogitator recalibration, lowering impossible targets through demonstrated incapacity. The plan represents Child's hope that systems designed for maximum extraction might respond to evidence of human limitation rather than simply eliminating insufficient units through administrative processing. Caney exaggerates the conspiracy's scope while providing specific details: barracks locations, shift timing, individual names of organizers whose faces he memorized during processing cycles. The intelligence deflects investigation focus from Gamma-7's rich ore vein toward targets lacking institutional value or protection networks. The betrayal serves protective function within alternate moral framework, where survival requires sacrificing expendable relationships for established bonds, proving their worth through mutual quota assistance and resource sharing. The transaction completes survival tax payment required by investigation pressure, while maintaining work-family cohesion through selective sacrifice of newer arrivals who lack integration into established networks. The shadow market processes human relationships as tradable commodities, measured against survival calculations that prioritize proven utility over abstract ethical considerations. What triggers desperate convicts to risk everything in open rebellion becomes visible as systematic pressures accumulate beyond tolerance thresholds. How systemic pressures build toward inevitable explosion awaits revelation as investigation machinery processes both success and failure through identical punishment mechanisms designed to maintain institutional control through calculated brutality. Caney's intelligence regarding the Delta-9 slowdown reaches its intended target within standard processing cycles, but administrative machinery operates on schedules that dwarf individual calculation. The investigation into exceptional productivity becomes irrelevant as overnight transmission from orbital command delivers mathematical impossibility disguised as operational directive. The announcement crackles through facility vox casters during morning muster. Quota increases of 40% across all primary extraction complexes, coupled with 15% population reduction through administrative efficiency. The arithmetic becomes immediately clear to populations surviving through careful resource calculation: 4.78 tons refined ore per convict per 16-hour shift, achieved by eliminating one body in 7 while demanding impossible productivity increases from survivors. The coordinated uprising ignites simultaneously across Mordax's extraction infrastructure as desperate calculation overwhelms survival instinct. The rebellion begins at shift change when tool depots open for routine distribution, trusted convicts seizing cutting implements and heavy spanners, while overseers focus on data slate productivity updates. 7 years of institutional knowledge converts into tactical advantage as work families coordinate through established communication networks, their survival arrangements transforming into command structure for systematic resistance. The first blow lands in the refinery complex, where Caney's welder strips power to upper gantries, plunging overseer stations into darkness, while improvised weapons spill from maintenance racks, rebar lengths sharpened to spear points, torque wrenches slung by cable, solvent bombs packed in rag-wrapped jars. Seizure of tool depots provides weaponry, while facility knowledge enables strategic targeting of critical infrastructure. Convicts with maintenance experience disable Vox relay stations, cutting communication between oversight levels and preventing coordinated response. The tunnel-borne workers establish defensive positions in deep shaft networks where narrow passages limit guard access and provide multiple escape routes. Attacks on overseer stations follow tactical doctrine developed through years of observing patrol routines. Rebels strike during skeleton crew periods, overwhelming isolated positions through numerical superiority rather than superior weapons. Servo skulls fall to shovel blades and improvised nets, while shock pikes disappear into eager hands that remember their sting. The decision to take hostages rather than kill immediately reflects calculated strategy born from institutional understanding. Dead overseers trigger immediate military response and mass reprisal protocols, while captured authority figures provide negotiation leverage and human shields against orbital bombardment. Commissar Vex finds himself dragged into a maintenance cage with cloth tied across his mouth, his storm cloak stripped away to reveal ordinary flesh beneath symbols of authority. The hostages are rotated through service ducts by convicts who understand that living captives buy time, while corpses buy nothing but accelerated punishment. Brief establishment of liberated zones in deep shaft networks creates territorial control illusion, while rebels organize defensive positions across multiple facility sectors. Underground communication networks, previously serving black market coordination, enable information flow between separated rebel groups, while facility knowledge allows movement through maintenance tunnels invisible to standard surveillance systems. In refuge chambers where respirator filters are swapped, convicts push ore, carts across entrance chokes and weld braces into bottlenecks. The zones provide psychological victory space where explosive collars blink amber instead of red, where quotas become meaningless numbers rather than survival mathematics. Internal contradictions surface before first blood dries on ferrocrete floors. Gang leaders from rival barracks argue doctrine as if words could cancel detonation codes, their competing objectives fragmenting unified resistance into factional disputes. Established work families seek negotiated settlement preserving survival arrangements, while newer arrivals demand complete overthrow of institutional authority. Some groups prioritize surface escape attempts, while others focus on hostage negotiation, dividing limited resources across incompatible strategic objectives. Trustees face impossible choices between rebel loyalty and institutional service, their informal power meaningless within revolutionary framework that recognizes no hierarchy except desperation. The impossibility of actual escape becomes clear as tactical reality overwhelms desperate hope. Mordax's orbital monitoring prevents surface evacuation, while atmospheric toxicity makes extended survival outside facility infrastructure impossible. Transport vessels require Mechanicus authorization codes unavailable to convict populations, while neighboring systems maintain standing orders to eliminate escaped penal populations on site. Geographic isolation transforms rebellion from liberation attempt into prolonged suicide, requiring systematic justification through alternate moral frameworks that measure dignity against survival probability. The inevitable Imperial response arrives within 8 hours, as Astra Militarum orbital deployment commences systematic reconquest through overwhelming force application. Dropships descend through perpetual overcast carrying veteran guard regiments experienced in facility recapture operations, their equipment including siege weapons, chemical dispersal systems, and specialized collar override technology. The military approach treats rebellion as tactical problem requiring efficient solution rather than political negotiation, prioritizing rapid restoration of strategic material production over casualty minimization. Flamer teams lead advances through shaft networks, while combat engineers restore communication systems and override security protocols seized during initial uprising. Systematic reconquest proceeds through coordinated assault on rebel positions using superior firepower and tactical coordination. Guard regiments advance through facility sectors while armored columns push from spaceports along pre-cleared corridors, their heavy stubbers beating rhythm into walls that matches earlier bell sequences. Chemical weapons flush rebels from defensive positions in tunnel networks while siege equipment reduces barricaded positions to rubble and corpses. The reconquest demonstrates institutional capacity for violence, exceeding desperate rebellion by orders of magnitude each tactical decision calculated to minimize infrastructure damage while maximizing personnel elimination. Climax arrives as emergency protocols activate facility-wide control systems designed for mass population management during crisis situations. The 9-bell sequence broadcast through restored Vox networks, its meaning finally revealed as emergency convergence signal activating collar detonation zones throughout facility infrastructure. The tones carry subharmonic frequencies that bypass normal obedience protocols, triggering Theta 9 authorization codes in explosive devices worn by every convict. Rebel positions become killing fields as collars detonate simultaneously across designated zones, eliminating resistance leadership while demonstrating absolute institutional authority over condemned populations. The mechanical rhythm counts lives converted to administrative losses, each detonation representing successful conversion of disobedience into strategic materials through rendering protocols. Protocol Purge 7 receives activation through Tri-Seal authorization from Commissariat Representative, Arbites Magistrate, and Facility Magos Logis, enabling mass casualty reclassification that maintains production quotas while eliminating regulatory complications from uprising casualties. The protocol transforms rebellion deaths into redemption through service entries, converting military casualties into spiritual victories, satisfying ecclesiarchy requirements while preserving facility productivity statistics for munitorum reporting. Administrative language conceals systematic murder through bureaucratic euphemism designed to maintain institutional legitimacy. The condemned achieve salvation through explosive collar activation rather than suffering punishment through military execution. Aftermath statistics reveal rebellion's scope and Imperial response effectiveness through clinical documentation. 23,000 casualties receive processing through rendering facilities within standard disposal timeframes, their bodies converted into strategic materials, maintaining facility efficiency ratings. Operations suspend for 6 months, while enhanced control protocols undergo implementation, including improved surveillance systems, expanded informant networks, and revised punishment hierarchies designed to prevent future coordination among desperate populations. The rebellion teaches institutional machinery how to better consume human resources while preventing organized resistance through systematic adaptation. Enhanced protocols represent evolutionary response strengthening institutional control through lessons learned from rebellion analysis. Facility command implements segregation procedures, preventing work-family formation while expanding trustee authority to include surveillance responsibilities previously managed by official oversight. New punishment categories address coordination attempts, while revised quota systems include automatic escalation triggers, preventing accumulation of systematic pressure beyond manageable thresholds. The uprising becomes educational opportunity rather than systemic threat, providing data for improved human resource extraction techniques applied across segmentum penal facilities. Caney survives through calculated positioning during uprising, close enough to avoid suspicion of collaboration, distant enough to escape systematic elimination during reconquest. His work family dissolves through casualty and administrative reassignment, survival arrangements destroyed by enhanced protocols, preventing reformation of protective relationships. The rich ore vein in Gamma 7 continues production under military oversight, while new convict populations arrive to replace administrative losses and resume strategic material extraction under recalibrated quotas that account for improved efficiency through enhanced control mechanisms. How the system adapts and strengthens after rebellion becomes visible through institutional machinery that processes resistance as educational opportunity rather than existential threat. What happens to uprising survivors under enhanced protocols awaits revelation as administrative categories convert rebellion casualties into spiritual victory while maintaining production schedules demanded by galactic war economy, consuming human resources with systematic brutality, refined through practical experience in suppressing desperate resistance among condemned populations scheduled for conversion into strategic materials. The enhanced protocols reshaping Mordax during 6-month suspension represent Imperial adaptation mechanisms converting rebellion into institutional improvement through systematic analysis of organizational vulnerabilities. While transport ships descend carrying replacement populations, Mechanicus Logis adepts arrive with cogitator arrays and data servitors, their augmetic limbs probing facility infrastructure while recording tactical lessons from uprising suppression. Post-uprising analysis proceeds through methodical examination of rebel coordination methods, communication networks, and resource acquisition patterns that enabled temporary resistance against overwhelming imperial authority. Identification of organizational vulnerabilities reveals how survival arrangements transformed into resistance infrastructure through predictable progression from mutual aid to collective action. Work-family structures receive particular scrutiny as informal networks enabling resource sharing and tactical coordination threatening administrative control. The analysis maps decision points where institutional oversight failed to detect systematic preparation among populations designed for individual desperation, converting protective relationships into command hierarchies during crisis situations. Administrative lessons emerge as institutional concept, transforming rebellion analysis into systematic improvement of human resource extraction techniques. Each uprising generates new control methods applied across segmentum penal facilities through standardized protocols distributed via administratum data networks. Circulars transmit segmentum-wide within processing cycles, retrofitting tool cages with cogitator locks keyed to overseer biometrics, flooding maintenance routes with Auspex beacons, severing trustee authorities from depot access. The lesson proves simple and scalable. Anything enabling work families to act as units requires breaking into administrative noise. The disturbing insight crystallizes through statistical analysis. Uprisings strengthen rather than threaten institutional systems by exposing exploitable weaknesses requiring correction. Rebellion casualties provide data regarding coordination methods, leadership identification, and tactical vulnerabilities, enabling improved control mechanisms, preventing future resistance. The system learns from each desperate attempt at liberation, incorporating lessons into enhanced protocols, making subsequent uprisings increasingly impossible through systematic elimination of organizational opportunities. Resistance becomes educational opportunity rather than existential challenge, feeding institutional adaptation, strengthening control through practical experience. Enhanced corrective measures follow as surveillance method revision implements lessons learned through rebellion analysis. Servo skulls receive upgraded optical sensors capable of thermal imaging and micro-gesture analysis detecting pre-coordination signals among convicts. Audio surveillance increases sensitivity for whispered communications, while biometric monitoring identifies stress patterns indicating conspiracy participation. Barracks undergo reconfiguration breaking established clusters while preventing formation of new, cohesive work families. Collars receive Theta 9' encryption and geofenced detonation lattices enabling surgical elimination of corridor sections without affecting adjacent lines. Survivor fates follow administrative categories, balancing example-setting requirements against resource conservation priorities. Identified leadership receives public execution during mandatory formations, their deaths providing visible demonstration while eliminating individuals possessing tactical knowledge threatening future security. Followers face transfer to higher security facilities where enhanced control protocols prevent coordination while maintaining productive capacity through individual isolation techniques. Select survivors receive recruitment as informants through structured incentive programs offering survival advantages in exchange for surveillance cooperation, converting enemy capability into institutional asset through pragmatic negotiation. Psychological aftermath manifests through survivor internalization of lessons regarding resistance, futility, and inevitable punishment escalation. Convicts who witnessed systematic suppression develop hypervigilance regarding coordination attempts, reporting suspicious behavior to avoid association with potential rebellion. The trauma creates conditioning where desperate populations police themselves through fear of collective punishment, eliminating institutional oversight burden while maintaining control through internalized surveillance. Survivors learn resistance brings greater suffering rather than liberation, accepting individual desperation as preferable alternative to collective destruction. Caney observes reconstruction from individual processing cell where enhanced protocols prevent communication with fellow survivors. His collar bears new authorization codes limiting movement while biometric monitoring tracks stress indicators for signs of continued resistance potential. The rich ore vein in Gamma-7 continues production under military oversight while his work family dissolves through casualty and administrative reassignment. Survival arrangements destroyed by enhanced protocols, preventing reformation of protective relationships. The administrative twist reveals rebellion casualties processed through redemption dockets as voluntary service transfers, converting military deaths into spiritual victories, improving Mordax's tithe compliance rating. 23,000 uprising casualties receive reclassification as heroic self-redemption fulfilling sentences through service to the throne. The bureaucratic manipulation transforms systematic murder into theological accomplishment, satisfying ecclesiarchy requirements while maintaining munitorum productivity expectations through creative accounting methods disguising violence as administrative success. Processing rebellion deaths through redemption. Dockets provides multiple benefits including tithe relief for planetary governors, spiritual victory statistics for ecclesiarchy oversight, and productivity maintenance despite massive casualties. Administrative language conceals systematic violence through bureaucratic euphemism designed to maintain institutional legitimacy while maximizing human resource extraction efficiency. Transport ships breach perpetual overcast carrying 12,000 new condemned into processing yards where rebuilt surveillance systems record biometric data for cogitator analysis. Mechanicus servitors conduct intake under enhanced procedures, preventing formation of protective relationships, while disinfectant sprayers hiss and monitoring systems pulse like watchful hearts. The cycle resumes under improved conditions designed through rebellion analysis to maximize conversion of disobedience into strategic materials while preventing organized resistance through institutional evolution rather than simple restoration. How rebellion changed daily existence for new arrivals becomes visible through segregation protocols preventing coordination while maintaining productivity through individual desperation. What forms of control exist beyond physical punishment await revelation as psychological conditioning and administrative deception combine, creating compliance systems operating through internalized surveillance and bureaucratic manipulation of hope itself. The enhanced protocols reshaping Mordax extend beyond physical surveillance into spiritual territory, where systematic brutality requires theological justification to maintain institutional legitimacy. The new arrivals processing through rebuilt facilities encounter apparatus designed to transform punishment into redemption through Imperial Creed doctrine that reframes systematic exploitation as divine mercy. Chaplain wardens arrive alongside Mechanicus reconstruction teams, their skull-faced helms surveying processing yards, while servo skulls record devotional compliance through biometric analysis. The spiritual framework promises salvation through suffering while ensuring institutional control through religious submission mechanisms operating alongside enhanced physical punishment hierarchies. Imperial Creed doctrine of redemptive suffering provides theological foundation enabling systematic exploitation while maintaining moral legitimacy through spiritual justification. The framework posits that criminals purge accumulated sins through labor and obedience, their physical torment purchasing absolution unavailable through conventional penance. Suffering becomes currency purchasing salvation, while productivity demonstrates genuine contrition worthy of eventual forgiveness. The doctrine transforms brutality into mercy by reframing punishment as opportunity for spiritual advancement rather than simple retribution, enabling institutional violence to operate under divine sanction. Chaplain wardens embody fusion of spiritual authority with institutional control, their dual mandate requiring simultaneous salvation guidance and compliance enforcement. These warrior priests conduct mandatory services during shift changes in vast chapels where industrial dust mingles with incense smoke, their litanies echoing machinery rhythms while blending spiritual dogma with production demands. Power armor bears purity seals inscribed with punishment quotas alongside scriptural verses, while augmetic sensors analyze vocal stress patterns during prayers. Confession booths double as spiritual tribunals where convicts recite crimes alongside productivity shortfalls. The ritual combining purification with intelligence gathering through theological framework designed to extract compliance through internalized guilt management. The central contradiction emerges through statistical analysis, revealing the system promises spiritual redemption while ensuring most convicts die before sentence completion through calculated mortality rates. 41% die within first year, while sentence lengths typically span 15 to 25 years, creating mathematical impossibility disguised as theological opportunity. The promise motivates compliance, while actuarial certainty ensures promises remain unfulfilled through systematic design rather than administrative accident. Hope becomes control mechanism rather than genuine liberation pathway, with redemption dockets serving as psychological incentives maintaining behavioral compliance despite statistical evidence of institutional deception. Convict adaptations to spiritual framework reveal three distinct survival strategies for navigating institutional dehumanization through religious interpretation. Genuine faith adoption occurs among populations seeking meaning within systematic brutality, their belief providing psychological resilience while enabling compliance with punishment doctrine. These converts internalize suffering as purification process while maintaining hope for eventual salvation through perfect obedience, finding solace in doctrine that their torment serves divine purpose. Their faith becomes survival tool, enabling endurance of conditions that would otherwise destroy sanity through despair. Compliance performance represents calculated adaptation, where convicts simulate religious devotion to gain institutional advantages without genuine belief. These performers master liturgical responses and confessional formulas, while maintaining internal skepticism regarding redemptive promises, their piety functioning as shield against punishment rather than spiritual practice. The performance requires careful behavioral management, balancing visible devotion with authentic cynicism, demonstrating sufficient contrition to avoid corrective measures while preserving psychological integrity through private disbelief. Alternative spiritual practices develop among convicts, creating informal religious frameworks addressing institutional inadequacies while avoiding heresy charges. These practices incorporate imperial symbology with survival-focused rituals, emphasizing collective protection and resource sharing rather than individual salvation. Underground prayer groups develop coded language for mutual aid coordination while maintaining plausible theological cover, finding meaning through shared suffering rather than official doctrine. The alternatives provide community formation opportunities within systems designed to prevent collective organization through individual desperation. Administrative reality reveals redemption functioning as behavioral control mechanism rather than genuine liberation path through systematic analysis of sentence completion statistics. Processing records indicate fewer than 3% of convicts achieve sentence completion, while administrative complications ensure freedom becomes practically impossible through bureaucratic obstacles. Completed sentences trigger review procedures identifying additional charges, reclassification requirements, or transfer obligations extending incarceration indefinitely. The system maintains redemption promise while preventing redemption achievement through administrative manipulation disguised as procedural thoroughness. Rare sentence completion cases encounter bureaucratic complications, transforming theoretical freedom into administrative impossibility through systematic obstacle creation. Convicts achieving sentence completion face additional processing, including background verification, psychological evaluation, skills assessment, and placement coordination, requiring months or years of additional detention. Identity documentation becomes problematic beneath numbers and scars, while homeworlds face retithing or bombardment, eliminating return destinations. Many receive reclassification as trustees or specialized personnel rather than civilian release, their institutional knowledge making them too valuable for liberation while too dangerous for standard population integration. Released convicts face immediate rearrest for administrative violations, including improper documentation or association with known criminals, including family members sharing their original convictions. Caney participates in mandatory confession session where enhanced surveillance protocols monitor spiritual compliance alongside productivity metrics. The ritual occurs in chapel spaces where disinfectant spray mingles with incense, while servo skulls orbit recording biometric data during prayers. His collar pulses amber during liturgical responses, while augmetic sensors detect stress indicators, recording confessional content for administrative analysis and future behavioral assessments. Fellow convicts shuffle forward with voices raspy from industrial dust, reciting crimes alongside productivity shortfalls in ritualized self-flagellation designed to internalize status as condemned resources requiring constant spiritual oversight. The confession reveals systematic deception where convicts recite prescribed contrition, while knowing absolution will never come through mathematical certainty rather than theological judgment. Their words carry required spiritual submission, while minds calculate survival probability through continued compliance versus resistance risk assessment. Each convict approaches the booth understanding that redemption remains perpetually promised and systematically denied through administrative manipulation disguised as theological mercy, their participation representing pragmatic submission to institutional authority rather than genuine spiritual practice. The spiritual framework converts desperation into devotion through carefully structured religious programming while maintaining productivity requirements through theological justification of systematic exploitation. Redemption becomes administrative fiction, enabling psychological control through false hope, with salvation serving as behavioral incentive rather than achievable goal. The system demands performance of faith, while ensuring faith cannot provide the liberation it promises, creating psychological dependency on institutional mercy that will never arrive. Do any convicts achieve genuine redemption and release through spiritual framework designed to promise salvation, while ensuring continued exploitation through bureaucratic obstacles, preventing freedom achievement? How does the system handle institutional survivors and long-term complications when redemption promises encounter mathematical impossibility disguised as administrative procedure requiring perpetual detention through theological justification masquerading as divine mercy? The confession sessions revealing redemption as administrative fiction serve as prelude to Penal Worlds' ultimate purpose within the Imperium's war economy. While convicts recite prescribed contrition, knowing absolution will never arrive, Munitorum assessors arrive with data slates and measuring instruments, their augmetic eyes cataloguing physical capacity, tactical experience, and psychological resilience through biometric analysis during mandatory prayers. The spiritual framework that promises salvation through suffering finds its grim apotheosis in systematic conversion of human bodies into expendable military assets, completing the machinery that transforms disobedience into strategic materiel through channels extending far beyond industrial extraction. The announcement arrives during morning muster, as commissariat officers emerge from transport vessels bearing fresh orders from Segmentum Command. Their proclamation frames decision without options. Convicts may continue labor assignments under enhanced protocols, or accept reassignment to penal combat formations serving the throne through accelerated redemption opportunities. The rhetoric emphasizes honor and salvation available through military sacrifice, while administrative reality ensures no genuine choice exists between statistical certainty of death through industrial complications versus theoretical possibility of survival with sentence completion through heroic service. Both pathways lead to systematic consumption, differing only in timeline and method of resource extraction. Mass conscription operates through carefully structured assessment procedures where mechanicus servitors conduct tactical evaluation alongside standard biometric cataloging. Physical capacity measurements determine suitability for different combat roles, while psychological stress indicators identify individuals capable of maintaining function under battlefield conditions. Previous criminal experience receives analysis for tactical utility. Gang enforcers earn classification for assault units. Former guard deserters receive assignment to punishment battalions. Political dissidents face deployment to operations requiring expendable leadership elimination. The process treats human resources as renewable inventory available through penal world production, while strategic objectives require completion regardless of personnel costs. Convicts receive 48 hours for decision consideration, while administrative machinery processes conscription quotas requiring specific numbers of military personnel within standard deployment schedules. The mathematics prove inexorable. Facility populations exceed optimal productivity levels, while military operations demand expendable shock troops for high-casualty operations, where conventional guard units represent excessive resource investment. Conscription solves both problems through resource reallocation, converting surplus labor into tactical assets while maintaining facility efficiency through population reduction, achieving multiple administrative objectives simultaneously. Training spans mere days rather than standard guard preparation cycles, consisting primarily of basic weapons familiarization and collar obedience conditioning. Recruits learn single tactical principle, advance when ordered, while demonstration sessions reveal collar tones that freeze limbs or remove heads that hesitate. Rifles receive issue with half-load magazines, while grenades undergo public counting and collection after practice drills. Explosive collar installation provides tactical coordination through remote detonation threats while preventing desertion attempts during combat operations, their frequency authorization enabling unit-wide elimination when tactical situations require absolute compliance regardless of individual survival instinct. Penal legion doctrine emerges from pragmatic military necessity, treating expendability as core tactical principle, enabling commanders to commit forces to operations requiring certain death while preserving regular units for subsequent objectives. Human wave tactics utilize numerical superiority to overwhelm enemy positions through sustained assault, regardless of casualty rates, their effectiveness measured through objective completion rather than personnel preservation. Commissarial oversight ensures proper expenditure of human resources through battlefield execution of insufficient enthusiasm or tactical cowardice, maintaining unit cohesion through systematic elimination of unreliable elements while recording casualties as heroic sacrifice rather than administrative waste. The case study unfolds through breach assault, where Penal Legion 847 Mordax receives deployment against fortified positions defended by extensive minefield barriers on Agriworld Tertius during Xenos incursion suppression operations. Military doctrine designates penal forces for initial assault phases where conventional troops would suffer unacceptable losses, their expendability enabling tactical success through systematic sacrifice. The operation requires clearing kilometer-wide defensive obstacles while maintaining forward momentum toward strategic objectives, despite expected massive casualties calculated at 90% minimum acceptable loss rates. Breach assault commences with penal troops advancing across minefield approaches in extended lines designed to trigger maximum explosive devices while maintaining forward momentum toward enemy positions. The tactical principle operates through simple mathematics. Sufficient bodies walking through minefields will eventually clear pathways for follow-up forces regardless of individual casualties. Snow lies over emplacements while aircraft wait above cloud cover until pathways receive pricing through blood payment. Vox traffic hisses coordination updates, while collars answer command tones compelling continued advance despite detonation patterns consuming entire ranks in explosive plumes lifting red steam into cold air. The minefield clears itself through systematic human sacrifice, first ranks vanishing in coordinated explosions while second ranks map crater patterns with their feet, falling where defensive patterns remain incomplete. Sergeants with data slates call coordinates between detonations, building safe lanes from sacrificial mapping while chaplains recite litanies, justifying tactical necessity through theological framework. Convicts attempting lateral movement feel collars tighten with pain frequencies, while forward momentum receives reward through amber-compliant signals, enabling continued breathing until statistical certainty achieves systematic consumption through extended exposure to explosive hazards. Caney receives conscription orders alongside 200 fellow survivors selected through administrative assessment, balancing physical capacity against facility knowledge, threatening security if retained. His redemption docket, carefully preserved through rebellion and reconstruction, receives validation stamps indicating sentence completion, possibility through military service, while actuarial analysis reveals mathematical impossibility of survival through deployment cycles averaging 89% casualties per engagement. Parchment provides psychological comfort while administrative reality ensures continued exploitation through military rather than industrial channels, conversion from one form of systematic consumption to another disguised as redemptive opportunity. Transport vessel loading procedures treat human cargo as inventory items requiring cataloging and distribution rather than personnel, deserving basic accommodation. Servo skulls monitor boarding while cogitators record biometric data for military processing, their mechanical attention focused on resource optimization rather than individual welfare. Caney clutches worthless indulgence while understanding redemption promises remain unfulfilled regardless of service location or sacrifice magnitude. The spiritual framework serving behavioral control rather than genuine liberation pathway through bureaucratic mechanisms designed to prevent achievement of promised salvation. Cross-cutting reveals Mordax resuming operations under enhanced quotas as Munitorum vessels depart, carrying dual cargo, refined promethium in primary holds, and shackled infantry in secondary compartments. Facility reconstruction enables simultaneous resource extraction and personnel conscription, maximizing productive capacity while maintaining military supply chains through integrated logistics treating strategic materials and human resources as equivalent commodities requiring efficient distribution. New convict populations arrive replacing conscripted personnel, while production schedules resume under improved efficiency protocols incorporating lessons learned through rebellion analysis and systematic adaptation. Statistical revelation exposes the scale of human resource integration within imperial military structure. Penal legions provide 23% of guard shock troops across segmentum operations, their contribution enabling conventional forces to maintain strength while expendable personnel absorb casualty rates exceeding sustainable levels for regular units. The percentage represents millions of condemned souls converted into tactical assets through conscription processes disguised as redemptive opportunity, their deaths serving strategic objectives while maintaining institutional legitimacy through military service rhetoric, emphasizing honor rather than systematic exploitation. Casualty statistics reveal 89% mortality rates per deployment, with survivors often receiving recollaring due to incomplete objectives requiring additional service before sentence completion. Administrative complications ensure military survival leads to continued exploitation rather than liberation, successful deployments generating new assignments until statistical certainty achieves systematic consumption through extended service requirements. The mathematics prove inexorable. Survival prolongs exploitation rather than enabling freedom through bureaucratic mechanisms designed to prevent redemption achievement regardless of heroic sacrifice or tactical success demonstrated through battlefield performance. Military integration completes systematic conversion of disobedience into strategic assets through war economy mechanisms, treating human life as renewable resource available through penal world production cycles. The process transforms punishment into tactical utility while maintaining theological justification through military service rhetoric, emphasizing redemption through sacrifice. Bodies become ammunition for imperial war machine, their systematic expenditure achieving strategic objectives regardless of individual survival or spiritual salvation, promised through frameworks designed to maintain compliance rather than provide genuine liberation opportunities. The transport seals with prayer-inscribed hatches while Mordax recedes behind atmospheric haze, its 9-bell sequence continuing to measure time in quotas and casualties. Who decides when redemption quotas become administrative fraud through systematic analysis revealing mathematical impossibility disguised as theological mercy? What keeps this system from consuming itself through contradictions between productivity requirements and conscription demands competing for identical human resources while maintaining institutional legitimacy through promises that cannot be fulfilled without destroying the machinery, making such promises necessary for behavioral control over populations scheduled for systematic consumption regardless of pathway chosen? The transport vessels departing Mordax carry more than strategic resources and human cargo destined for the penal legions. They bear evidence of institutional contradictions that threaten system stability through competing bureaucratic imperatives demanding mutually exclusive outcomes. While Caney's worthless indulgence crumbles in transport hold darkness, data streams flow between orbital stations, revealing fundamental tensions between agencies claiming authority over identical resources. The machinery converting disobedience into material operates through delicate balance of conflicting mandates, each department pursuing objectives that undermine others while maintaining collective fiction of unified imperial purpose. The Adeptus Arbites demand code purity in conviction procedures and punishment implementation, their magistrates requiring documentation proving legal compliance with imperial justice doctrine regardless of operational efficiency. Every sentence must mirror statute, every revolt must draw exemplary punishment measured against legal precedent rather than tactical necessity. Their auditors arrive with thick codices and measuring instruments, cataloguing regulatory violations while production quotas burn through impossible mathematics. Law wants purity, but purity slows the harvest. The Departamento Munitorum requires sustained output meeting strategic material quotas, transmitted from Crusade Command, their assessors measuring facility performance through tonnage delivery rather than procedural correctness. Prefects gesture at star maps pocked with crimson demands while explaining arithmetic that reduces human complexity to shipping manifests. They measure success through refined promethium flowing to Navy vessels and munitions reaching Guard regiments, viewing legal compliance as administrative luxury during wartime resource shortages. The ledger, not the law book, fixes the pace. The ecclesiarchy trades indulgences for behavioral compliance while demanding spiritual authenticity in redemption programs. Their chaplain wardens monitoring confession sessions for genuine contrition alongside productivity metrics. The theological framework requires visible suffering balanced against hope for salvation, creating psychological incentives, maintaining order through promised rewards that must remain achievable to motivate compliance yet impossible to fulfill without eliminating labor populations. Hope becomes inventory, issued, tracked, and when necessary, recalled. The Adeptus Mechanicus optimizes throughput while controlling sensor data that might reveal efficiency, improvements threatening other agencies' resource claims. Their tech adepts manipulate productivity statistics to maintain optimal extraction rates without triggering interventions from competing departments, claiming sacred machine spirit authority over data interpretation while citing ancient treaties establishing Mechanicus autonomy over technical operations. To own the sensors is to own the narrative. When numbers displease, they become sacred. When they flatter, they become proof. From these tensions emerges an incentive schedule that rewards failure in the right form. Uprisings permit higher loss allowances through emergency protocols, enabling facility commanders to exceed standard mortality thresholds without regulatory penalties. An uprising, properly contained, unlocks emergency allowances, loss ceilings lift, cull ratios widen, redemption dockets receive posthumous stamps while counting toward tithe relief. Governors learn the cadence, raise quotas, wait for the snap, authorize Purge 7, book the dead as willing servants, and breathe for a quarter. The pattern remains unwritten but taught through administrative necessity. Arbites, Magistrate Thorn, arrives during facility reconstruction with suspicions regarding statistical patterns, suggesting systematic manipulation of uprising frequency for administrative advantage. His data slates reveal quota increases clustering at fiscal segment endings, while surveillance outages precede most flashpoints by exactly one inspection week. His requests for raw telemetry return as red seals and liturgical denials, citing sacred machine confidentiality. He may seize a convict's wrench but cannot compel cogitator access. The Munitorum prefect gestures at starving campaigns on sector maps, asking which army Thorn prefers to deny. The question proves logistical rather than legal, and therefore decisive. Within Arbite's doctrine exists final remedy, cross-agency audit code Sigma Basilisk, capable of exposing systematic cycling of uprisings into throughput statistics through comprehensive data analysis spanning multiple departments. The audit would freeze ledgers, compel data unions, and drag every machine spirit's memory into legal examination, revealing administrative manipulation disguised as emergency response. However, invoking Sigma Basilisk risks shutting strategic material shipments to active crusade fronts during investigation periods, creating military supply disruptions, threatening combat operations, requiring continuous resource flow. The law possesses teeth, but war maintains larger mouth, demanding constant feeding. Evidence of systematic coordination arrives through encrypted channels as Confessor Hadrius receives memo bearing commissariat authorization and ecclesiarchy validation. The directive proves brief but revealing, preach order in suffering, tie gratitude rights to production increments, emphasize the gift of service transfers. Filed under gratitude litanies, the instruction requires theological adjustment, presenting systematic exploitation as divine mercy requiring grateful acceptance rather than desperate resistance. When he mounts the dais, Hadrius speaks of the emperor's harvest and the honor of being counted, converting sermon into production tool and sedative. When faith and law collide with production requirements, ledger mathematics prevail through institutional priorities, favoring strategic, material output over procedural correctness or spiritual authenticity. The system protects itself through bureaucratic complexity, preventing comprehensive oversight while enabling each agency to claim success within narrow mandates despite systematic failure of collective objectives. Thorn files, cautions, and departs. Hadrius preaches gratitude while counting attendance. The Magos publishes efficiency hymns. The contradiction becomes operating principle. Conflict becomes equilibrium. Equilibrium becomes yield. Will anyone invoke Sigma Basilisk and force systematic exposure, risking the war effort itself? If uprisings are incentivized through administrative advantage, who seeds desperate resistance among condemned populations, and how frequently do rebellion cycles require management to maintain optimal balance between productivity and casualty allowances? The institutional contradictions that prevent Sigma Basilisk invocation while enabling systematic uprising management find their ultimate resolution in Mordax's rendering complexes, where war economy logistics examine complete resource extraction from human bodies through industrial processes cloaked in sacred ritual. While Confessor Hadrius preaches gratitude for service transfers and Magistrate Thorn files jurisdictional protests, conveyors beneath facility levels carry administrative losses toward final conversion into strategic materials. The machinery that transforms disobedience into material completes its circuit through systematic consumption of every organic component, revealing the system's foundational principle where nothing wasted becomes everything consumed. The corpse starch plants operate in cathedral-sized chambers where disinfectant mist mingles with incense smoke, their processing lines converting rebellion casualties and industrial accidents into protein blocks feeding guard regiments across the segmentum. Intake crews in waxed aprons guide gurneys beneath numbered nozzles, while inked tags swing from toes like minor liturgies. The vats rise tall as shrines, banded with data sensors that pulse with sacred light, while tech adepts perform data sanctification rituals with precise motions of incense thuribles. Binary cant blesses the macerators as they chew, centrifuges sing hymnal frequencies, and milky paste flows through warming sleeves toward extruders, pressing ration bricks stamped with aquilae. The air tastes of metal and cloves, sweet nauseating steam rising from processing that transforms cannibalism into communion with imperial purpose. Adjacent organ harvest theatres gleam under surgical illumination, where mechanicus chirurgeons extract functional components from bodies too damaged for complete rendering but possessing salvageable parts. Autosurgeons hang like iron bats from gantries, while optic stacks lift corneas and lung combs grade alveolar integrity. Hearts destined for servitor systems pump through ruby tubes beneath watchglass where robed attendants whisper cipher prayers. Glands bound for juvenat regimes travel in climate-controlled containers, while nervous tissue feeds cogitator biocomponents, enabling data processing impossible through purely mechanical systems. Incense curls over cranial interfaces during cortex slate removal, the ritual language concealing systematic murder through religious terminology, emphasizing resource conservation rather than human consumption. The servitor conversion forges represent final destination for bodies deemed suitable for cybernetic integration, their assembly lines transforming condemned flesh into mechanical servants through systematic replacement of organic systems with augmetic components. Skull caps receive heating and fitting while spinal taps enter like drill bits through wet clay. Red-robed priests paint oil sigils along shaven scalps, muttering catechisms of erasure while cranial interfaces take hold. Limbs removed for specialized tools stack in numbered bins while hydraulic talons and cable anchors lie on felt pads like relics. The process converts rebellion leadership into institutional assets, preserving tactical knowledge through memory engrams while eliminating consciousness that enabled resistance coordination. The result denies personhood but grants utility: trolley haulers with reinforced vertebrae, tunnel crabs with folded legs, bell ringers without hands. The collar frequency systems planted throughout facility infrastructure enable targeted elimination, feeding rendering quotas through precise population management during routine operations. Theta 9 authorization codes permit selective detonation without disrupting productivity schedules, converting individual punishment into resource acquisition while maintaining plausible deniability regarding deliberate instigation. Uprising casualties receive processing through standard disposal protocols, their deaths becoming rendering inputs rather than military casualties while avoiding regulatory complications. Even ash receives utilization through agricultural applications where cremation residue becomes fertilizer for guard ration production on agri-world supporting military campaigns, completing systematic transformation where organic matter becomes food, inorganic components become tools, and consciousness becomes servitor programming. Tech adept Cyrus moves along processing lines with wand and book of figures, smoke from his censer bending in vent pool as he halts beside vat throats to recite without looking up. All waste is treason against the throne. Every gram of protein serves imperial purpose. Each component finds optimal utilization through blessed efficiency. The conservation catechism transforms systematic consumption into theological virtue, presenting complete resource extraction as moral imperative rather than institutional brutality. A body's caloric value receives tabulation against transport costs and expected campaign needs, while hair becomes filter felt, nails become flux, teeth become devotional trinkets for paymasters who swear ignorance. The neatness becomes cruelty, the virtue becomes weapon, leaving no remainder where reprieve might fit. Far from Mordax, Caney's penal cohort drops through atmospheric entry toward battlefield deployment, where 89% casualty rates await systematic consumption through military rather than industrial channels. The black-bellied lander spills condemned souls into weather that cuts like filings while collars tick command tones. Ahead, tree lines stitched with wire and mines wait for proof of bodies. The company serf marking their posthumous distribution has already calculated percentages: 10 to protein, 3 to organ salvage if timely, 2 to servitor potential if limbs survive clean, the rest to heat and ash. Numbers, then dirt, then light. Caney grips his parchment indulgence because there remains nothing else to hold, the worthless document softening in melt that follows first volleys rather than burning clean. Back on Mordax, the facility's 9-bell sequence receives repair through limbless servitor whose organic components originated from previous rebellion casualties, consciousness erased while mechanical precision enables continued service. The servitor noses along rail tracks to the rusted tower where clapper hangs by single remaining cable braid, latching rope with steel mouth before dragging. The 9th stroke quivers down refinery stacks through rebuilt galleries over vats and forges into barracks where new workers sit with ration bricks cupped in both hands. The repair logs is successful while sound serves as prayer and schedule, marking time in quotas and casualties. The system achieves perfect efficiency through complete consumption disguised as redemptive opportunity. Convict bodies become food-feeding guard regiments, fuel-powering navy vessels, machinery-serving facility operations, ammunition loading into weapon systems. The transformation occurs through industrial processes sanctified by religious ritual while maintaining plausible deniability regarding systematic murder disguised as administrative efficiency. The final twist crystallizes through recognition that the system's proclaimed virtue, nothing wasted, represents its ultimate violence through total conversion of human identity, dignity, and physical existence into strategic materials serving galactic conquest. The cycle closes without seam as transport vessels arrive, carrying fresh populations while rendering complexes process previous cohorts. Through protein vats and servitor forges, the machinery operates with mathematical certainty. Human disobedience enters through conviction pipelines, while strategic resources exit through shipping manifests, completing systematic transformation of resistance into war economy inputs. If all waste constitutes treason against the throne, mercy becomes heretical inefficiency, threatening optimal resource extraction. What remains of human identity when every component undergoes scheduling for consumption, when consciousness dissolves in sanctified protein vats, while individual resistance converts into servitor programming, eliminating dignity through systematic processing that transforms rebellion into institutional assets, serving imperial conquest through war economy logistics, achieving perfect efficiency through complete consumption of everything that once constituted human hope. The rendering complexes, processing rebellion casualties into strategic materials, complete the circuit of an eternal engine that converts human suffering into imperial conquest through systematic consumption disguised as redemptive opportunity. While Caney's worthless indulgence dissolves in transport hold darkness and limbless servitors repair facility infrastructure with programming extracted from previous casualties, the machinery reveals its true scope, not aberrant cruelty, but foundational architecture enabling galactic dominion through resource flows measured in megatons, millions of lives, and incalculable economic advantage generated for the imperial war machine. The system operates as closed loop where nothing escapes conversion into strategic utility. Ore torn from Mordax's strata becomes weapon casings and vehicle chassis shipped to distant battlefields. Promethium refined under clanging bells feeds navy drives and hive furnaces across the segmentum. Protein blocks pressed from administrative losses move along cold chains to regiments that will never know the names flavoring their rations. Bodies stripped for augmetics reappear as servitors returning to ring bells, count casualties, and maintain production lines. Penal cohorts step from facility ledgers into military manifests, the same human resources consumed by shellfire instead of industrial accidents. The transformation achieves perfect efficiency. 31% of segmentum-grade strategic materials emerge from penal facilities at 6% of standard production costs, while 23% of guard shock troops originate through systematic conscription of condemned populations. Growth follows war's appetite with mathematical inevitability. Each crusade generates expanded punishment quotas as resistance movements face systematic suppression, while conquered populations provide fresh criminal categories requiring penal processing. New penal sites illuminate sector maps as existing facilities reach capacity limits, their expansion driven by administrative algorithms balancing labor demand against conviction supply. The administratum reweights sentencing matrices delivering bodies where production lines run light and extraction engines hunger for feeding. Minor debts transform into service terms measured in decades rather than years, while traditional pardons disappear from judicial options. The system learns to want faster than any world can heal, growing like rust through patient institutional momentum that converts legal process into resource acquisition mechanism. All planted elements converge through institutional design rather than administrative accident. The 9 bell convergent signals function as emergency population management, enabling targeted elimination during routine operations, their harmonic frequencies activating collar detonation zones across facility infrastructure. Theta and sign authorization codes provide precise control over individual compliance and mass casualties, enabling surgical elimination of resistance leadership while maintaining plausible deniability regarding systematic murder. Protocol Purge 7 operates as standard procedure rather than crisis response. It's tri-seal authorization, enabling mass casualty reclassification that converts uprising deaths into voluntary service transfers, improving facility compliance ratings while maintaining production quotas. Redemption dockets serve as accounting fiction, maintaining psychological compliance through false hope. Their bureaucratic obstacles ensuring promises remain systematically unfulfilled while providing tithe relief for planetary governors. Even rebellion cycles feed throughput statistics through managed uprising frequency, providing casualty allowances that reset productivity baselines while enabling population replacement through fresh transport arrivals. Bureaucratic momentum perpetuates expansion through institutional inertia, where competing agency mandates serve collective machinery, consuming human resources with systematic efficiency. The Arbites maintain legal compliance through procedural correctness, while demanding conviction quotas. The Munitorum achieves production targets through resource extraction while requiring sustained output, regardless of human costs. The Ecclesiarchy provides theological justification through redemptive suffering doctrine while trading indulgences for behavioral compliance. The Mechanicus optimizes throughput through technological efficiency while controlling data interpretation, preventing comprehensive oversight. The contradictions become operating principles where conflict enables equilibrium through systematic consumption, each department claiming success within narrow objectives, while participating in collective deception that fragments accountability across jurisdictional boundaries. Return to opening image reveals shift change at processing yards, now contextualized by full scope of institutional violence operating through systematic transformation of human dignity into strategic advantage. The 847,000 numbered backs bending toward painted muster lines represent inventory scheduled for conversion through industrial processing or military deployment, their movement guided by routes leading toward extraction facilities where systematic consumption occurs through mechanisms designed to maximize utilization while maintaining theological legitimacy. Steam rising from processing yards carries sense of disinfectant and human rendering, while 9-bell sequences measure time in quotas and casualties rather than hope or redemption. The rust-eaten bell continues mechanical rhythm as limbless servitor maintains equipment through programming derived from erased consciousness, technical knowledge preserved while individual identity dissolves into institutional utility. New transport ships descend through perpetual overcast, carrying replacement populations, while rendering complexes convert previous cohorts into strategic materials feeding imperial expansion. The cycle operates with mathematical certainty through conviction that brutality serves necessary purposes justifying any human cost, sustained by participants who genuinely believe their actions serve galactic civilization against existential threats. Overseers implement enhanced protocols convinced they protect humanity through systematic sacrifice of individual dignity for collective security. Chaplain wardens preach redemptive suffering, believing they offer salvation through systematic exploitation. The framework transforms murder into moral imperative through theological justification, emphasizing service over survival, duty over dignity, collective purpose over individual humanity. At gantry rails across facility infrastructure, overseers clear voxcasters and announce daily targets with voices carrying institutional conviction that systematic consumption serves divine mandate. Chaplains answer with prescribed prayers, swinging censers over faces already filmed with industrial dust, while servo skulls begin counting and production lines resume their relentless drag. The procedural creed closes each circuit, modest as administrative stamp yet enormous in enabling systematic brutality through theological framework providing cognitive justification for participants, through labor, redemption, through suffering, service, through service, the throne eternal. The eternal engine continues operation, certain in purpose, sustained by conviction that imperial survival requires systematic sacrifice, processing its own contradictions through rendering facilities that convert resistance into resources while maintaining expansion through institutional adaptation that transforms human identity, dignity, and physical existence into strategic materials serving galactic conquest across the galaxy's breadth.